So let's get cracking with our Bootstrap landing page. I'm going to start by putting together the navigation. So I've got my Bootstrap template in front of me here, and your first challenge then is to try and come up with a basic navigation bar across the top and have your brand and a small collection of links. So just 2 or 3 links on the left-hand side of the navigation menu. Off you go. I hope you managed that. I'll just talk you through how I think you should have done it. So we start off with a div with a class of navbar, and we'll give it a navbar default styling. And then we have a container within that. I'll just close those divs. So a container, and then we have our navbar header. There it is. And then we're going to need our button, which we use if the screen size is so small that we need to have the menu as a drop down. So it's a class of navbar toggle, and the data toggle is collapse, and data target is, well, we'll leave that blank for the moment because we don't have a data target yet. And then we'll put in our spans for our icon bar. There we go. And another one of those. And then we'll close our button. And then we'll have our navbar brand. And I'm just going to call it My App. You can use whatever you like as the title there. Okay, then we close the navbar header div. And now we want our navbar collapse area. Div with a class of collapse and another class of navbar collapse. We'll just close that div there, and in fact we can use that as our data target. Great. And then we have our UL, which is going to be our unordered list for all our links, and that has a class of nav and then a secondary class of navbar nav. Now we have all of our LIs. Now I'm going to have home. I'll put it in a href is going to be my home div. And home, and that will be selected by default, so we want class equals active there. Then we'll have another one, which will be about. And then my third is going to be for downloading the app on the App Store. So we'll call it download. Let's go and fill in these. So we want an about and a download the app. Okay, let's take a look at that. Nice, looks pretty good. I think I'm going to make the My App text a little bit larger. That's easy enough to do. Just create some styling up the top there, and then navbar brand. We want to style to, let's try font size 1.2 EM. A little bit larger. Great, maybe one more. Okay, I like that. And we've got our drop down menu. We'll just close the list and take a look. Looks good. Yep. I'm liking that. Very nice. Okay. So that's our navbar. Now this time I wanted to add in a login form as well, just so that we can try that out and see how it works. So the way we bring in a login form is after our UL, but still within our collapse area, because we want the login form to collapse as well. Then we have a form, and we give it a class of navbar form, because it's a form in the navbar, and we want to bring it over to the right. So navbar-right will do that for us. Great, and then within that form we just create a form in the normal way. So class equals form group, and then we want input, and we'll have a type of email. Give it a placeholder of email, and a class of form control. Close that there. Notice having the placeholder there actually saves us from having a label. So when we're running out of space, we don't want to put lots of labels in. So if we can put them inside the actual input themselves, then that solves the problem. Then we'll have a password, placeholder of password, still got class of form control. Great, and lastly we'll have a button, which will be our submit button. And we'll give it a class of BTN and BTN success. We'll have a login. Great, and then we just close that form. Oops. There we go. Let's take a look. So when we click down there, we've got a really nicely laid out login form, and then up here, that still looks really good. Okay, fantastic. Now let's look at the background image that I want to use. When finding stock images, there's a really good blog article that I found a while ago that I'll link to in the notes, but that has a great deal of different sites that you can go to find free but high quality stock images. And I had a quick look through those, and I found this image, which I thought was really nice. I'm going to use this one as the background. So all I did was click download, and then took the large version, and then right clicked and save image as. Okay. So one thing before we do that, I do want to make my navbar fixed. So we'll add the navbar fixed top class to the navbar. Great. Okay, so let's have our first container. Class equals container. Close that div. And this container, we want to have the background of the image. So let's give it a particular ID. Call it top container. And then top container is going to have a background image. So background image of a URL, and that will be, I've saved it as background.jpg. Let's Let's take a look. We'll give it a height temporarily as well, so we can see what's going on. Okay, nice. There it is. But we want it to spread all the way to the bottom of the screen. So a nice way to do that is to use a little bit of JavaScript. We saw something similar. Let me just bring up the bottom of that window for you. We saw something similar when we did our jQuery project. So here's a quick test for you. Can you set the height of the image to be equal to the height of the window? All right, I hope you did something like selected top container, CSS, height, and then set that equal to the window height. Take a look at that. Great. Now you'll notice that we've got a bit of padding around the edge of the image there. I don't really want that, so I'm going to set the width of the top container to 100%. That should stretch out the image. Now you'll notice also that we haven't actually got all of the image there. So there's a nice CSS trick that we can use to get that working better, and that's using the cover background size. So let me show you how that works. We just set the background size attribute to cover. And now you can see it's scaled it all nicely for us. And the really nice thing about that is it does flash, unfortunately, when you're doing this, but when we have a screen size, it hasn't actually stretched the image into something really small. It's displaying it really nicely. It's just displaying a bit of it, so it still looks good even at a small screen size. So that's a nice trick when you want to use the background image there. Okay, now we need to bring in some content. So I'm going to have a centered div here, which is going to be 6 columns wide. So first of all, can you create a new row and a column within that, which is 6 columns wide? I hope you managed it. All we need to do is create a new div with a class of row. Close that div. And then create a div with a class of column medium device 6. There's another nice trick we can use here from the Bootstrap docs. We can use the col md offset class, and what this does is it actually moves the div along slightly. So if I use col md offset 3, then that will move the div with a class of col md 6 into the center of the page, because we're moving it 3 columns to the right. So that's a really useful trick if you want to center things or move things around. And then we'll close that div. And in that div we'll have an h1 tag. And for the moment we'll just put some text like my awesome app. Hopefully you'll come up with some better title text. Okay, now we've got an issue there. It's actually come up above the space. It is centering nicely, so that's fine, but it is too high up, so let's move it down a little bit. Let's give this another class, or no, we can give it an ID. We'll call it top row. So top row. We'll just give it a margin at the top of, let's try 100 pixels. And we'll also center everything. Great, that's starting to look pretty good. So we've got my awesome app there. I think we want that a little bit bigger. So let's go for 200%, see how that looks. Bigger than that. I think we need to actually resize the H1 element, not the top row. So top row, H1. Oops. Let's put font size 300% there. Great. Yep, I think that looks good. And as always, just make sure it looks nice when we stretch it out. Fantastic. Do apologize for the flashing there. Now, underneath then we need a little bit of text explaining what this app does. There's a nice class in Bootstrap called lead, which just makes it a little bit larger, a little bit more of a standout piece of text. So this is why you should download this fantastic app. Always best to keep your text really simple, really straight to the point, and really brief. Okay, now we'll have another paragraph with a bit more information about the app. You can go into a little more detail here. If you want to. Okay, nice. I'm liking that. Now we're going to have a form to allow the user to sign up to our mailing list. So just before we do that, let's have a bit of text that encourages the user to do that. Let's give it a class. Just going to make it bold. Okay. Interested? Join our mailing list. Great. And then we'll have our form. Now, how I'd like to do this is a single input with an @ symbol on the left-hand side. So we don't have any enter your email or anything like that. We just keep it really simple. So see if you can manage that. Okay, what we do is we have our div class equals input group. And we close that div. And then before we put our input, we have our span with a class of input group add-on. Hope you remember that. And we're going to have a symbol, @ symbol there. Close the span. And now we'll have our input. Type equals email. Class equals form control. And we'll have a placeholder of your email. See how that looks? Nice, I like it. And then we'll have our button. So, well, we'll do it as an input. Type equals submit. Class equals BTN and BTN success. Oh, something's gone a little bit wrong there. That's because I didn't. Oh, I've put this inside my input group div. We don't want that. Okay. We can actually change the size of our buttons as well, just by saying button LG. That'll give us a nice big button. Fantastic. Okay, I'm liking this. I think I want to space it all out a little bit more though. That submit button especially could do with a bit of padding before it. So let's give it another class. I'll give it a class of padding top. Padding top. We want a padding. Actually, I think we're going to want a margin top of, let's say, 30 pixels. Yeah, that looks better. I think I might add that to a couple of others as well. Let's just change the name so it makes a bit more sense. Margin top. Margin top there too. I'm going to add that in to that paragraph tag and also to the form. Just to give everything a bit more space. Great, there we go. I think that looks really nice. I just want to move down the very top, the My Awesome App there. So let's give the H1 a class of margin top as well. Give it a bit more room. Okay. Excellent. I think that's looking really nice. Now we're going to add a second container with a bit more information about the app. So we move here and we're going to create a new container. Close div there. And what we want is a centered row with a nice big bit of text saying something about the app. So why this app is great. So see if you can do that. Did you manage it? So we have div class of row. Now if it's going to be a full row, we don't need to create any columns inside it. So we'll just have an H1. Why this app is awesome. See what happens here. So our div is displaying nicely down there. We do want things centered, I think. So let's have a new class of center. We might well be using that again. Just check that. I suspect we're going to need to give the H1 that class as well. There we go. Great. Now it's difficult to design something while we can't really see what we're dealing with. So it would be great if all of the sort of subsections of the app, of the page, the rows were all the same height, and it would be really nice if that was the height of the browser window. So we used our script here already to set the top container height to the height of the window. So let's have a new class of content container. And we'll give that to these containers. And then they'll all be set to the same height. Great. So now we've got a lot of room to play with. One issue we're going to have with that is there's a potential that the height of their device is actually smaller than the height of our content. So we can deal with that very easily and change the CSS from height to min height. and that then specifies the minimum height should be equal to the window, and if they happen to have a device which is smaller than our content, then the height of the div will just increase as needed. So that's looking good. Why this app is awesome, I think I want to play with that a little bit, maybe make it a little bit bigger, and move it down a touch. So we'll give it a margin top of 100 pixels this time, and a font size of, let's try 300%. Okay, that looks good. I like that. Okay, carrying on. We now want another bit of lead text, summary of the app's awesomeness. Great, and we want to make that centered as well. Great. Okay, so that will do for that row. Now we're going to have a second row which is going to contain 3 equally sized columns on the full width page, and then they're going to be stacked on the mobile version. So have a go at that. Okay, I hope you pulled that off. What we're going to do is create a new row. And then we have a new div of col MD4, because we want 3 rows, 4 goes into 12 3 times. Okay, now these rows are going to contain a header. You can call it title or header, doesn't really matter. And then some text. Brief description of one of the best features of your app. Maybe a little more text. Okay, let's just see how that looks. Great. I think I'm going to have that twice because we could do with a little bit more text there. Great. And then we're going to have a call to action. Always good to have a lot of call to actions on your site to make it really clear what we want the user to do. So we'll have a button. Button success. And we can make that anything you like. We'll just make it a sign up button. I'd quite like to give that a bit more padding. Let's see how my margin top looks with that. Great, spaces it out a little bit. I like that. And we're also going to put a glyph icon into the header. So why don't you try doing that? Pick a nice glyph icon and pop it in just before the header. All right, I'm going to choose the music glyph icon. So we do span class equals glyph icon, and then glyph icon music. Close the span, put in a little space. Great, I like that a lot. Okay. And now if we actually expand that, we can see that, yep, we've got a nice laid out column there. Oh, you'll notice that the button is floating left there. That's because we don't have paragraph tags around our text as we should. Better. Okay, let's create another couple of these, and we'll leave the content the same for now, but I'm going to change the glyph icons to, I'll use the off icon and the pencil icon. Okay, nice. I'm thinking maybe a little bit more padding on top of the divs themselves would be good. So we'll give them the class of margin top. Easily enough. Copy and paste that there. Nice. That spreads it out a little bit more. Excellent. And then if we look at it full screen, still looks great. Okay, so we've got two sections to our page so far. Let's add the third. So we want another container div. And let's give it a class of content container as well. So it stretches to the height of the user's screen. I'd like to have a background color for this div. So we get a nice big block of color behind it. So let's give it an ID of footer. And I've saved a nice light blue background color. Just have a little look, see how that looks. Great. I like it. We are going to need a bit of padding there though. So let's add a margin bottom to our, not to that div, but to that one. Margin bottom. Great. And then we'll just add a margin bottom of 30 pixels. Great. So that's not too close together. So in this last div, we're simply going to have a nice call to action of to actually download the app. So we'll have a class of row. It's 100% row, so we're not going to put any subdivs within that. And we'll have an h1 of a class of center. Download the app. There we go. I think we want to move it down a little bit like we did before, so we can use the same class, center and title. Great, and then we'll have a final bit of text. Really, why should I download this app? So your final bit of persuasion there, we definitely want that to be centered as well. Great. And then we need a link to the App Store. Easy enough to get one of those. There's lots of icons that you can download and use. So let's have App Store icon in Google Images. I don't really want that one. I want something like that. Great. So just right click on the available on the App Store icon and save it. If we have a look, I've already put it into Bootstrap. The Bootstrap folder as appstore.png. So very simple. Let's have another paragraph tag with a class of center. And then we'll put our image in there, appstore.png. Let's give it a size, or well, let's give it a class. App Store image. So we'll go for a width of 250 pixels. See how that looks. Nice. That looks great. I'm just going to move that down a little bit more. So let's give the top row div a bit of padding at the top. Do I want top row? No, it doesn't sound right. This one. So class equals row. In fact, we could use the footer ID. That would save us having to give that one any more padding. So padding top, let's try 70 pixels. See how that looks. Pretty good. Okay. And then you could add some footer text there, just a, maybe some Twitter links or another contact email address or something like that, but I'll leave that up to you. So now we've got a really nice 3-stage page. Oh, you'll notice we're missing those. See if you can fix that before I get there. We need to set the width of the footer div to be 100%. That should then stretch it out all the way. Great. So I hope that's given you a taste of how you can use Twitter Bootstrap to create a very attractive landing page very, very quickly. And I'm really keen to look at some of the landing pages that you guys have made, so do give links to them in the forums, and I'll come and check them out.